It was a quiet morning at the small train station on the edge of town. The kind of morning where the air still smelled of dew, and the soft whistle of the arriving train felt like the heartbeat of the place. Most people came and went quickly, clutching their coffee cups, their minds already halfway to work or school. But at the far end of the platform, on the same wooden bench he had occupied for years, sat an old man. His gray hair was neatly combed, his coat carefully pressed even though it was faded at the cuffs. In his trembling hands, he held a small bouquet of daisies and a diary bound in worn brown leather. Every few minutes he would glance at his watch, as if timing something only he understood. The station master, a middle-aged man named George, had grown used to seeing him there. "Morning, Arthur," he called out as he passed by. The old man looked up and gave a faint smile. "Morning, George. Any delays today?" "None that I know of," George replied, shaking his head. "You expecting someone again?" Arthur's smile lingered for a moment before fading into something softer. "Always," he said simply. It was the same answer every time. No one knew exactly who Arthur was waiting for, but everyone at the station knew his story, or at least the pieces of it they'd managed to put together over the years. Some said he was waiting for his late wife. Others claimed it was his daughter who had moved away and never returned. But the truth was, no one really knew. The young commuters often whispered about him, some taking secret photos for their social media, captioning them with things like, "The lonely grandpa at platform 3. But Arthur never seemed to mind. His gaze was fixed on the tracks, as if expecting someone to step off the next train and call his name. Around mid-morning, a new face appeared at the station, a young woman named Lily, who had recently moved to town for her first job at the local newspaper. She noticed the old man the moment she arrived. Something about the calmness in his eyes, mixed with quiet sorrow, made her stop and stare. Over the next few days, she saw him again and again, always on the same bench, always with the same bouquet and diary. Curiosity began to tug at her. Finally, one afternoon, she walked up to him. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. Arthur looked up, startled for a moment, then smiled politely. "Good afternoon, young lady." "I see you here every day," Lily said. "You're waiting for someone, aren't you?" Arthur chuckled, the sound carrying a hint of nostalgia. "Aren't we all waiting for someone, dear?" Lily smiled at his gentle humor but didn't let it go. "I'm sorry if I'm being too forward. I'm a journalist. I write small stories about life around town, and I couldn't help but wonder about yours." Arthur's eyes drifted toward the tracks. The sound of a passing train echoed across the platform. "My story?" he repeated. "It's not much of a story anymore. Just a collection of moments that never arrived." Lily tilted her head. "What does that mean?" He hesitated, then looked down at the diary in his lap. He ran his fingers across the cracked leather as if it held something sacred. "This belonged to someone I loved very much," he said quietly. "She used to write everything in here. Her dreams, her fears, her plans for the future. I read it every day because it's all I have left. Your wife?" Lily asked softly. Arthur shook his head slowly. "No, my daughter." The words seemed to hang in the air. The train station suddenly felt quieter, the world slowing around them. "I lost her a long time ago," he said after a pause. "Not to death, but to distance. To choices. Mine mostly." Lily felt a chill in her chest. "What happened?" Arthur smiled faintly, though his eyes glistened. "She used to come here every summer when she was a little girl. I'd bring her ice cream from the shop across the street. We'd sit on this same bench watching trains go by. She loved the sound of the whistle, said it felt like the world was calling her somewhere far away." He took a shaky breath. "And one day she left. I told her she couldn't, that it wasn't the right time, that I needed her here. But I was too proud, too afraid to let her live her life. So she walked away. She told me she'd come back on the 12th of June. That was 20 years ago." Lily's eyes widened. "You've been coming here every day since then?" Arthur nodded. "Every day. Every 12th of June, I bring flowers. But every other day, I just wait. Because hope doesn't come once a year. It lives quietly, even when it hurts." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The station's loudspeaker crackled to life, announcing the next train, but Lily barely heard it. Her heart ached for the old man sitting beside her, a man trapped between love and regret. As she stood to leave, Arthur looked up at her. You write stories, you said? Yes, Lily replied softly. Then maybe you can write one for me, he said. Not about me. About her. Maybe if her story is told, she'll find her way home. Lily swallowed the lump in her throat. I will, she promised. I'll write her story. Arthur smiled faintly, then turned back toward the tracks, the sunlight catching the silver in his hair. Lily watched him for a moment longer before walking away, her mind already spinning with thoughts. That night, she sat in her small apartment, the sound of rain tapping against the window. She opened her notebook and wrote the title, The Man at Platform 3, but as she began to write, something strange happened. The more she tried to describe Arthur's story, the more she felt like there was something missing, something he hadn't told her. The next morning, she returned to the station, determined to learn more. Arthur wasn't there. She looked around, scanning the benches, the waiting hall, the ticket counter, but the space where he usually sat was empty. The daisies were gone, the diary nowhere in sight. George, she called to the station master. Have you seen the old man? Arthur? George frowned. Not today. First time in years he hasn't shown up. Lily felt a strange panic rise inside her. Do you know where he lives? George shook his head. He never said. Just always here. Same time, same bench. Lily stood frozen for a moment, staring at the empty spot on the platform. The station felt different that day, quieter, heavier, as if missing something vital. When she finally turned to leave, something caught her eye. Under the bench, tucked neatly in the shadow, was a single daisy. And beside it, the old brown diary. Lily bent down and picked it up carefully. On the first page, in shaky handwriting, were 4 words that made her heart race. For her, if I'm gone. Lily sat on the bench where Arthur had spent so many years waiting. The diary felt heavy in her hands, though it was small enough to fit inside her bag. She brushed her fingers across the worn leather cover, still faintly warm from the morning sun. The words on the first page echoed in her mind again and again. For her, if I'm gone. The handwriting was fragile, shaky, almost trembling, as if each letter had been written with effort. For a moment, she hesitated. It felt wrong to open something so personal, yet something deep inside told her she had to. Slowly, she turned the first page. June 12, 2005, she left today. Said she couldn't breathe here anymore. Said I was too much, too protective, too proud. She promised she'd write. I told her not to bother. Lily paused, her throat tightening. She could almost see Arthur, younger, angrier, a father lost between love and control. June 15, 2005, the house is quiet. I can still hear her voice in the walls. Every sound reminds me of her. The teacup she left on the table, her shoes by the door. I told myself I wouldn't miss her. I lied. Page after page, Lily read through years of a father's silent confession. Regret bled through every word. Letters written not to the world, but to a daughter who never received them. July 2, 2006. I saw a girl at the station today who looked just like her. My heart stopped. It wasn't her, of course. She wouldn't come back, not after what I said. Still, I waited an hour after the train left. I don't know why. The next entries were shorter, but they carried the same weight. A man trapped in his own guilt, punishing himself with hope. As Lily turned the pages, she reached a newer section, the ink fresher, the handwriting weaker. December 21st, 2023, it's been 19 years. I still bring daisies. They were her favorite. People stare sometimes, whisper. They think I'm mad. Maybe I am. But madness is a small price to pay for love. Lily's eyes welled with tears. She closed the diary for a moment and looked around the empty platform. The train whistle in the distance sounded almost like a sigh, long, mournful, fading into the wind. She wiped her tears and kept reading. January 5th, 2024. Young woman spoke to me today. She reminded me of her. Curious eyes, kind voice. I didn't tell her much. Some stories are too heavy for strangers. But when she smiled, I felt something I hadn't in years, hope. Lily froze. Her heart skipped a beat. That was the day she met Arthur for the first time. He had written about her. If she comes again, I'll tell her everything. Maybe she can help me find her. My daughter's name is Claire, Lily whispered the name softly. Claire. The pages after that grew even shakier, the ink uneven, as if written with trembling hands. March 2nd, 2024, my health is failing. The doctor says I should rest, but how can I rest when she's still out there? If she ever comes back and I'm not here, I want someone to tell her I never stopped waiting. Lily pressed her lips together, her heart aching. She turned another page. May 30th, 2024, I've made a mistake. I found something I should have sent years ago, a letter. Her letter. She did write to me. I just never opened it. Her pulse quickened. There was a small folded piece of paper tucked between the pages. Lily carefully pulled it out. The envelope was yellowed, the edges curled, but the handwriting was clear. To Dad. With trembling hands, Lily opened it. Dear Dad, I know you're angry. I know I disappointed you, but I had to go. I couldn't stay in a town where my dreams were too small for your expectations. I want to see the world, not just read about it. I'll come back one day, when I've made something of myself. When you can be proud of me again, please don't stop waiting. I'll find my way back to you. Love, Claire. Lily covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The letter was dated only a few months after Claire had left. Arthur must have received it, and hidden it from himself, unable to face what it said. She sat there for a long time, the diary and letter on her lap, the noise of trains fading in and out. The world kept moving while one man's love had stood still for 2 decades. By evening, Lily had made up her mind she needed to find Claire. That night, back at her apartment, she opened her laptop and searched every possible record she could find. Social media, local archives, missing person reports. There were too many Claires, too many dead ends. But one result stood out. A woman named Claire Hamilton, age 40, living in a seaside town 3 hours away. A writer, Lily's heart raced. Arthur had once mentioned that his daughter loved to write. The next morning, she packed her bag, tucked the diary and the letter inside, and caught the earliest train. The journey felt endless. Through the window, she watched fields pass by, clouds stretching like ghosts across the sky. She thought about Arthur sitting in the same kind of seat years ago, maybe taking the same route, carrying the same hope. When she finally arrived, the town was small but beautiful, narrow streets, pastel houses, and the smell of salt in the air. She found the address listed online, a small bookstore at the corner of a quiet street. The sign above the door read, Claire's Words. Lily's hands trembled as she pushed the door open. Inside, a woman stood behind the counter, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes calm but distant. She looked up as the bell above the door chimed. Hello, she said kindly. Looking for a book? Lily took a step forward. Are you Claire Hamilton? The woman nodded. Yes, that's me. Lily hesitated, her throat tight. I met someone who's been waiting for you. Claire froze. Waiting for me? Lily slowly pulled the brown diary from her bag and placed it on the counter. Your father, Arthur. For a moment, the air between them went still. Claire stared at the diary as if it were a ghost come to life. Her hand shook when she touched it. I thought, she whispered, her voice cracking. I thought he hated me. Lily shook her head gently. He never did. He waited every single day. He kept your diary safe all these years. He just wanted to see you again. Tears streamed down Claire's face as she opened the diary, flipping through the pages. Her fingers trembled over the words her father had written. When she reached the page with her name, she broke down completely, pressing the book against her chest. I wanted to go back so many times, she sobbed, but I was afraid he wouldn't forgive me. Lily's eyes softened. He already did. Claire looked up, her eyes red and wet. Where is he? Lily hesitated. He wasn't at the station yesterday. I don't know where he is now. Claire wiped her tears quickly. Then I'm going to find him. She closed the diary, her resolve clear in her voice. He waited for me all these years. Now it's my turn to go to him. As night fell, Lily and Claire boarded the train back to the city. Neither spoke much during the ride. Claire held the diary close to her heart, staring out the window as lights flickered past. Halfway through the journey, she whispered, He used to tell me that trains were bridges between hearts, that no distance was too far if love waited on the other side. Lily smiled faintly. He said something like that to me too. When the train finally pulled into the station, the platform was quiet. Claire stepped out first, scanning the area, the benches, the ticket booth, the empty vending machine by the wall. Her breath caught when she saw it. On the same bench where he always sat lay a single daisy, fresh and bright against the wood, and beside it, a folded piece of paper with her name written on it. Claire picked it up with trembling hands. The note was short. "My sweet Claire, if you're reading this, then maybe my waiting has finally ended. I always knew you'd come back. Don't be sad, my love. The world needed you, and I was just lucky to have you, even for a while. Remember me not as a man who waited, but as a father who never stopped believing. I'll be where the trains never stop and the goodbyes never hurt. Love always. Dad." Claire pressed the note to her chest, her tears falling silently. Lily stood beside her, unable to speak. The station lights flickered, and in that moment, the soft echo of a whistle sounded in the distance, long, warm, almost like a farewell. Claire whispered into the quiet night, "I'm home, Dad." The air at the station was still when the sun began to rise. Morning light spilled over the platform, painting the benches gold. For years, this place had belonged to one man, a quiet figure with soft eyes and trembling hands, waiting for a face he thought he'd never see again. Now, that same light fell on his daughter. Claire stood where her father had once sat, the diary and letter clutched tightly against her chest. She hadn't slept all night. She didn't need to. The silence around her said everything her heart refused to. Lily stood a few steps behind her, watching quietly. She didn't want to interrupt. Some moments belonged only to the heart. Claire turned slowly, her eyes tracing every inch of the platform, the faded posters, the cracked tiles, the old clock that still ticked out of rhythm. Her father had waited here through summers and storms, through years that had stolen his strength but not his hope. She could almost see him sitting there, hat tilted, coat buttoned to the neck, eyes fixed on the horizon as if the next train would bring her back. She whispered softly, "I'm sorry, Dad." Her voice broke. "I should have come sooner. You gave me everything, and I ran away thinking I'd find more. But everything I ever needed was right here." A gust of wind swept across the platform, rustling the pages of the diary. Claire looked down and saw that it had opened to a new page, one she hadn't read yet. The handwriting was faint, but still his April 7th, 2024, if she ever returns. I hope she knows that forgiveness was never needed. I understood, even when she didn't say a word. I was young once too, stubborn, proud, and chasing a dream that wasn't mine. Maybe that's what she got from me. Claire smiled through her tears. "You were right, Dad," she whispered. "I did get that from you." She sat on the bench, her fingers tracing the cracks in the wood. It felt warm, as if it still carried his presence, his laughter, his patience, his love. The station wasn't just a place anymore. It was a memory that refused to fade. Lily finally stepped closer. "Claire," she said softly, "there's something you should see." From her bag, she pulled out a small envelope she had found earlier that morning near the tracks. It had been tucked under a loose board, barely visible. On it were 2 words written in shaky ink, "For my daughter." Claire's breath caught. Her hands shook as she took the envelope, carefully opening it. Inside was a small photograph, an old picture of her as a little girl, sitting on her father's shoulders, both of them laughing in the sunlight. Behind the photo, there was another letter. "My dearest Claire, you once asked me why I loved trains so much. I told you it was because they always come back, no matter how far they go. I suppose that's what I've been hoping for, that you'd come back too. If you ever find this, remember what I told you that day at the park. Love doesn't end when people leave. It only waits. Sometimes for a day, sometimes for a lifetime. But it always waits. I'll be at peace now. Because I know you'll read this. And that means you came home." Claire pressed the letter to her lips, tears running down her face. "I'm here, Dad," she whispered. "I'm home." Lily turned away, unable to stop her own tears. She had never met anyone like Arthur, a man who waited with such quiet strength, who turned his pain into faith. And now, standing beside his daughter, she finally understood why he'd smiled every time a train arrived. It wasn't the trains he loved. It was hope itself. Claire spent hours at the station that day. She cleaned the bench, placed fresh daisies in a small vase beside it, and set her father's diary beneath the flowers. A small plaque had been fixed there by the station workers, in memory of Arthur Hamilton, who believed in love strong enough to wait forever. People walking by slowed down when they saw it. Some smiled, some stopped to whisper prayers. The story of the old man who waited had quietly become part of the station's soul. As the evening sun dipped low, Claire turned to Lily. "I don't want this to end here," she said. "People should know who he was," Lily nodded. "Then let's tell his story." Weeks passed. Lily helped. Claire published her father's diary under the title The Man Who Waited. It became more than a book. It was a letter to everyone who had ever lost someone, a message that love doesn't vanish with distance or time. Readers around the world wrote letters, sharing how Arthur's story reminded them of someone they missed. The station itself became a place of quiet pilgrimage. Strangers began leaving flowers, letters, even photos on that old wooden bench, and every time Claire visited, she would smile and whisper, "See, Dad? You're still bringing people together." One afternoon, a young boy ran up to her. He couldn't have been more than 7. He handed her a daisy. "My grandma says this is the flower of hope," he said shyly. Claire knelt down, smiling. "She's right. It's also the flower of waiting for someone you love." "Who did you wait for?" the boy asked innocently. Claire's eyes softened. "My dad. But now I think he's the one waiting for me, somewhere beyond the trains." The boy grinned. "Then he must be really proud of you." She nodded, her voice trembling slightly. "I hope so." Months later, Claire returned to the station alone one evening. The platform was empty, bathed in the amber light of sunset. She sat on the bench and opened the diary one last time. The pages fluttered in the wind like wings. She closed her eyes and whispered, "You waited your whole life for me, Dad. Now it's my turn to live for you." The next train roared into the station, its whistle echoing across the tracks. The sound felt familiar, comforting, and for just a heartbeat, Claire thought she saw him standing near the door of the last carriage, smiling softly, his hat in his hands. The train passed, and the vision faded, but the warmth in her chest remained. Lily's voice echoed in her mind. "He's not gone, Claire. He's just on another platform." Claire smiled faintly, whispering to the empty air, "Then I'll see you there, Dad, someday." A year later, the station was renovated, but one thing was left untouched: Arthur's bench. It stood in the same place, polished and clean, with fresh daisies always resting beside it. Travelers still sat there, unaware of the story behind it, yet feeling an odd peace whenever they did. And every spring on the same date, a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile would come to that spot. She would place a single daisy, sit quietly for a while, and then leave with a look that said everything words couldn't. Some stories never really end. They just wait, like trains, like love, like memories that refuse to fade.